Following an emotionally and physically taxing 1-1 draw against Wales, the United States turned their soccer attention to another nation from the British Isles, England, a nation that the U.S. has a ton of history with, both on and off the pitch, a nation that has one of the strongest soccer cultures in the world, and a nation that the U.S. absolutely has to get a result from if they want to get out of this group. Now, it's going to be difficult. England has a pretty good squad that is pretty strong throughout the lineup. And England is coming off of a 6-2 thrashing of Iran, a game in which England got to take a lot of their players out and rotate, so they'll be fresh and ready for the U.S., who did not get the opportunity to rotate a lot of players. We had a pretty cruel and rough and emotionally and physically taxing 90 minutes against Wales. Can the U.S. pull it off? Well, that's what we'll be discussing in this episode of the Yank Report. What's up? My name is Sam. This is the Yank Report, a show about all things American soccer. If you are into American soccer, if you are into the World Cup, if you are into the red, white, and blue, this is the place for you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. You can become a member as well. Hit that join button at the bottom so you can directly support the channel. Now, I'm going to introduce Brad, and we're going to tell you exactly why the U.S. is going to beat England on Friday, we hope, on this episode of the Yank Report, right after a word from this week's sponsor. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. Bet online, where the game starts. Let's light this candle and introduce producer Brad, a man dressed like a Garth Brooks album cover right now, just brimming with American confidence right now. He is on location right now because I think you've traveled for the holidays. Brad, how are you feeling after that 1-1 draw against Wales? How are you feeling as we loom ever closer to this game against England?
Well, I couldn't help but feel patriotic based on my current location. I am at possibly the most patriotic household in the continental United States, and that is my brother's house. My brother is in the Navy, and on the other side of my camera, I'm looking at a World War II naval uniform, and I'm a big poster of Rosie the Riveter that says, "We can do it." So that is my mantra. We can do it. Absolutely, we can. You know, we all were a little deflated. If you were to tell us, and we talked about this prior to the game against Wales, Sam and I were like, we would be ecstatic with a win. We'd take a draw. But it was the way we had that draw with a mistake that didn't need to be made. But you know what? Only forward. Solo Palante. That's the way this team will go. Bring on England. There's some interesting team news going on coming out of the England camp. So we'll get into all of that. But I, as an American, am ever hopeful.
Yeah, I think that's the approach right now. Solo Palante. I mean, England is coming Friday, whether we like it or not. It's going to be a huge game. I mean, non-soccer fans have been talking to me about it right and left. It's the one that I think all Americans kind of have circled on their calendar just because of the historical ties with England, because of we don't have the language barrier, and there's just so much interest in this particular matchup. I think we should start out with England, first of all. Let me go through their 11 that they put on the field against Iran. So up top, they had a striker named Harry Kane. I believe he plays for Tottenham.
That's his name.
Yeah, they had a winger named Raheem Sterling, who now plays for Chelsea. Mason Mount also plays at Chelsea.
Heard of him.
Saka is a young winger from Arsenal. Jude Bellingham, a young midfielder from Borussia Dortmund. Declan Rice is a young midfielder for, I forget which club he plays for. What is it?
He plays for the Hammers of West Ham.
West Ham. There you go. Luke Shaw is at a small club in Manchester. Harry Maguire as well. John Stones is at another small club in Manchester. Trippier, where's Trippier playing right now?
Newcastle.
Okay. And Jordan Pickford is going to be, he was their goalkeeper. Now, a
That's
lot of these
lucky.
players were rotated. It's a fairly strong lineup. They could definitely put this lineup back out on the field if they would like. Aside from their captain, aside from their talisman, Harry Kane, it looks like Harry Kane picked up an injury in that game. It looks like, according to reports out of England, it sounds like he'll be good to go for the England game, but it also sounds like it might be one of those things like, why risk him at this point?
So he picked up a knock in the 48th minute, got rolled up on, and his ankle is apparently heavily taped. They did a scan on it, and it didn't reveal any structural damage. So he is good to go, depending on his pain level. So he can't. This is something he can further injure, but they're going to tape the crap out of it, and he won't be able to move as much as they would want him. And that's something that is one of his calling cards is his off the ball movement. I mean, seared in my mind is the last week of the Premier League before the break was when he gave a little to Tyler Adams and then knocked in a header against in their game against Leeds. I don't know. There are two competing arguments here. Do you risk him now? Do you think that Callum Wilson or Marcus Rashford are good enough to go beat the United States, who, in all honesty, if England is being honest with themselves, we are the second strongest team in this group. There are some other factors in there. But do you risk him? In my opinion, they don't. I don't know if they start him in this game.
It makes sense if you're a team that's as strong as England and is likely to get through this group and has bigger fish to fry in this tournament. I don't know why you risk your captain at this point unless you know that he's going to be 100% good to go for this game. However, I was taking a look at the last, I'd say like 10 games that England has played over the last two years or so. And Harry Kane has been the starting striker in every single one of them. I mean, he is a fixture in that lineup. And it is going to be interesting to see if they don't have Harry Kane in that lineup, how it affects the team, how they play. Because despite the fact that England has rotated a ton of players in and out of their lineup just because they have so many talented players, Harry Kane has been that guy who's been there all along. So how are they going to be able to adjust?
I think their ideal adjustment is left home in Brentford and being accused of 234 accounts of gambling infractions. So I think Ivan Toney would be the natural successor. I don't know if they trust Callum Wilson with that role. I really don't. They brought him on in the waning minutes of the Iran game, didn't really do much. Marcus Rashford came on. He's played the striker role before, and he's brimming. He wasn't really in Eric Ten Hag's plans when he first came to United. Ten Hag, that being Rashford, was there for a while before him. But he's come on as of late. He's scored multiple goals in the run up to this, and he bagged one against Iran. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're still going with that front three to see Marcus Rashford up there.
It'll be interesting. And if they play Marcus Rashford up there, he has a striker profile that is much different than Harry Kane's.
Very different.
I wonder how that affects Greg Berhalter's selections. I don't know. There's a lot of moving pieces to this. I guess now it's time to turn our attention to the U.S. men's national team. When we last saw the U.S. men's national team, there were a lot of questions about the health of this lineup. I think first and foremost, the big question coming out of the first game against Wales was, where was Gio Reyna? We had a report saying that he experienced some tightness in his hamstring, and we know that Gio's had a long history of issues with that hamstring. Gio has said he's 100%. Greg Berhalter said that he'll be available for England. Then we got a report today. I think it was Stephen Goff reported that all players will be available for the England game. But I mean, I think if you're a U.S. men's national team fan, I think it's fair to be skeptical about whether or not Gio Reyna is going to be available for this game. What are your thoughts?
I think it was a missed opportunity to not see him come off the bench against Wales. I think that game was screaming for a Gio Reyna cameo. I think just some of the things we have been able to see him do, especially in transition, I think that game was prime for Gio. But, if if he picked up that tightness, this is a long tournament. And if Greg's playing the long game, he's playing the long game, I guess. But in my opinion, there really is no tomorrow for this team. So I think you have to start him. I think the bigger injury question for me is actually Weston McKennie. And I think that could open up an opportunity for us to see Gio Reyna slotted not into a Weston role, but I think there could be some fun wrinkles that the U.S. deploys to really get after this England team. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for you. The way Iran played was sit back, let's see if this world-class attack can pick us apart. Spoiler alert, they did pick you apart 6 times. Could have been a lot more. So I don't think you wait and see if they can pick you apart, and then maybe we'll hit them on the counter, because they did. Taremi hit him on the counter twice. But the problem was they hit you 6 times the other way. So I don't know if sitting back and absorbing that pressure is going to be the best way for this team to get after it. So I think this could be a good game for Gio to make a start and make a name for himself as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing you want to see is Gio starting and then pulling up lame after 15 minutes, and then you got to burn a sub and you've lost him for the tournament. And that's worst case scenario. And it's not like that's an impossible situation. I mean, we saw that.
No, we've seen that many times.
Yeah, so that's scary. I mean, none of us know exactly what's going on with that particular issue. Now, you bring up Weston McKennie. I don't know if you guys saw my my Wales versus USA deep dive. I did a whole piece on Weston McKennie and him gesticulating to his groin area in the 38th minute. You could see the visible padding that he had around his leg, probably to help that injury. Then whenever you saw him come off the field, you saw him immediately remove whatever that was, and him just rubbing that area. Clearly, he's bothered by it. Now, Weston McKennie's a player that we know that was coming into this game with an injury and has been playing with an injury at Juventus for probably the entire season at this point. So we know that he's banged up. We know that he might be able to go, though. I think the question is it worth having him in the lineup versus other players? Is a 70-80% Weston McKennie better than what we potentially get out of other players? I don't want you to reveal your lineup quite yet because we're going to go over that in a second. But what are your thoughts on Weston McKennie? What we got from him against Wales, and do we need him against England?
I think we will need him against England. I don't think it is as a starter, because you could tell that his first touch was a little lacking. He was
for sure.
He was laboring a lot, but he did have some moments of connection with Serginho Dest and Tim Weah that were great. But if it's for me, I think you got to start Brendan Aronson. I mean, Brendan is starting week in, week out for Leeds and holding his own and in moments doing very, very well. I think he will bring the intensity to that game that Weston just can't right now. Now, Weston, I think we saw it from Rage and Review a second ago. I think he is a late sub in this game. I do think there is that possibility. Especially if we're trying to go aerial here or just trying to see out the game. I would much rather have him coming off the bench than any of our other midfielders. But I think if you're looking at that lineup, I think you absolutely start Brendan Aronson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to press you in a second because it sounds like you're starting a lot of midfielders, so it's going to be interesting to see what your lineup actually is. Somebody else brought up that Weston's also on a yellow, which is another issue. I mean, we have a lot of players on yellow thanks to that Qatari referee who was just handing out yellows for fun for a while there. Now, those are not the only 2 injury issues that we might potentially have. I mean, Serginho Dest is another player that came into the tournament reportedly having a bit of a knock. He gets pulled in around the 60th minute. I don't know that we're going to see Serginho go 90 minutes at this point in one of these games because it looks like he just doesn't have that in him. Any concern about Serginho Dest starting in this game against England?
Maybe not starting. I was very surprised to see DeAndre Edlin come off the bench.
Yeah.
I would have absolutely gone with Joe Scally. I don't know if Greg just doesn't trust Joe Scally, but we talked about this in the pregame show. The kid made his debut in the Bundesliga against Bayern at Bayern when it was still the world-beating Bayern Munich with Robert Lewandowski still up top, and he held his own. So I don't think the kid's going to be scared of the moment. So I think if you want someone who is still going to offer that creativity going forward, but you're really not going to have to worry about him making any rash decisions, I would go with Joe Scally over Sergiño Dest if you're worried about Sergiño Dest's health at all.
Yeah, to be fair to DeAndre Yedlin, it's not like he was involved in giving up the goal. I think he accounted well for himself defensively. I mean, he's not going to offer you anything going forward. Every time the ball fell to him and he was going to hit a cross, it was like, yeah, okay.
It was very labored. It was very predictable as well.
Just kick it out of bounds. I mean, you might as well.
He did at one point. There was a moment where he actually did kick it out of bounds, and he was like, sorry, my bad. I was like, all right, fine.
And it's frustrating because I think Joe Scally can actually hit a fairly accurate cross, and he can give you that play on both sides of the ball. It's yet to be seen if Greg's going to trust Joe Scally in one of these games. Maybe it is against England. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see. I think he's one of those players that can make an impact on this team. We'll see moving forward. But I think now's the time where we actually go through this lineup and talk about who we're going to play against England, which is a difficult thing. And I think I'll start out by saying Matt Turner in goal. Jedi is going to be the left back. Now for the left center back, we talked a few weeks ago or last week about Tim Ream, about Aaron Long, about CCV potentially playing this left center back role. For my money, Tim Ream had a phenomenal shift. One of the stronger players on the field for the U.S. throughout. I thought his passing just gave a dynamic to this team that we haven't seen in a while, having two players who were capable of hitting line-splitting passes. In the one moment, really, where Wales tested him in the channel, he was able to keep up the pace. I think it was the moment where Matt Turner actually came out and headed the ball, and it did kind of turn into an incident where it didn't really have to. I thought Ream had it set up, but still, I think you go with Ream in this position. What are your thoughts?
You cannot take Tim Ream off the pitch, and it's not just because he was solid defensively and he made good decisions passing in the buildup. There was one moment for me that solidified that you need him out there. It was he played a ball to Christian Pulisic, and you heard him on the broadcast go, "Turn!" And Christian turns around and makes a great run. He sees the game so well, and he has been around so long that nothing is going to phase him. And he plays against these guys week in, week out. He and A-Rob held Manchester, barring a very soft penalty in the 95th minute. They held Manchester City to 1 goal. And I don't see how you could possibly take him off the pitch at this point.
I like this contribution from Adam Stam here. How far off is a back three? Considering I think the last time Berhalter felt like he was really going to be under siege was that Nations League game, that Nations League final against Mexico, where he opted for the back three. Is that something we potentially might see? Because if you're in a back three, you can have some interesting options about who you can play in the midfield. Is that something that Berhalter potentially turns to for this England game?
Oh.
Brad, we lost you. Are you still there? Yeah, I mean,
possibly. I think the three you would be looking at would be Tim Ream, and then Walker in the middle, and then possibly CCV.
Yeah, it sounds like we're having a little bit some connectivity issues with Brad, but yeah, it's an interesting idea, and it's not as if we've never seen Greg Berhalter turn to this in a moment where the U.S. feels like they're going to be conceding a lot of possession, and it's an opportunity to potentially see Gio Reyna in that midfield. It's an opportunity to really see the counterattack get going for the U.S. It's something that we saw work well against Mexico in that Nations League final. I don't know if it's completely out of the question. Now, to be fair, it's not something that we've seen in a long time from the U.S., So it's going to be interesting if Greg just out of nowhere turns to a back three suddenly in the Nations League. It looks like we lost Brad for sure there. So I'm going to be maintaining the ship for a second while he gets his connection back up and running. But yeah, that's a really interesting thing, and it's something that I've not thought of. So I appreciate that, Adam Stamp. But I think just for this exercise of kind of going through what this setup is going to be against England, I think we're going to see the Ream and Zimmerman partnership. I think those guys worked fairly well, and I don't think we would have had a thing to say about that partnership had it not been for Zimmerman going through the back of Gareth Bale at the end of that game, which, to be fair, was a terrible mistake, and it's something that you hope to never see again. And it's something that we were never expecting out of somebody like Walker Zimmerman, who just seemed to not put a wrong foot anywhere throughout World Cup qualifying. But of course, in the big moment, that's just the freaking World Cup, man. Just crazy things happen. At right back is an interesting thing. I mean, I remember last week whenever me and Brad were discussing who we thought Greg would put out for these different games, he opted to go, I think, with Joe Scally for the England game. And he cited Scally's better defensive ability compared to Serginho Dest. Now, Dest offers ability in the build-up that is better than any of the other fullbacks that we have. I think we know, if you guys are watching kind of my tactical breakdowns, that whenever the U.S. has the ball in possession, Anthony Robinson is always pushed forward into that front line. Serginho Dest actually sits back and allows the U.S. to build from the back. Looks like we got Brad back. Let me add him back in.
I am now joining you from my phone. The joys of travel, everybody.
Yeah, Brad's traveling for the holidays right now, so things are a little bit sketchy, but glad to have you back. Brad, I'm assuming that the center back partnership is going to be Ream and Zimmerman.
Yeah, I think you don't get down on Walker Zimmerman, even though he had an absolute blunder for a mistake he didn't have to make. You send him back out there. It's like Top Gun, just keep sending him up. He is he's been a mainstay in your lineup. He's a guy that a lot of these young guys look back at and see that everything's going to be okay. You can't take him off. Not now. It's too late. You got to dance with the one that brought you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in that vein, talking about right back is an interesting discussion. I mean,
it is.
You're going to have two world-class wingers coming down that flank over and over and over again. Serginho Dest's defensive ability is something that has been in question for a long time throughout his career. Nobody is saying anything about Serginho whenever he has the ball at his feet. But whenever you got a top-class attacker coming at him, there's some question marks there. Do you go with Serginho Dest in this situation, or are you thinking about somebody else?
I'm thinking about Joe Scally. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. Serginho Dest, I think in this game, you're going to have a guy who really is comfortable doing both. Now, Serginho Dest didn't get beat at all. I mean, maybe once or twice, but I think he availed himself pretty well defensively. He did take a lot of chances, but I think those really panned out well. He did have one mistake where he should have laid it off to Pulisic, where he would have had a 3v2 situation.
Oh, but he had an opportunity to play in Weah, and he took a shot from like 40 yards out. That just, oh my. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you go with someone who's a little bit more sensible in this game, who knows when to take those chances and when to stay back. And I think you have a young guy who I mean, granted, Serginho Dest is still only 21 years old. But you have, I think Joe Scally is one of those young dudes who is very sensible and is willing to not take a chance that could possibly lead to a mistake. So for me, I would go with Joe Scally.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I see Nate here says Des put Dan James on lock and key, and that's when people thought he struggles with pacey people, but they pulled Dan off at half. And I got to say, we're not going to face Dan James against England.
No.
I mean, it's going to be Raheem Sterling. It's going to be Saka. It's going to be Rashford. It's going to be Grealish. It's going to be Foden. It's going to be some top class strikers that that go up against top class defenders week in and week out and do impressive things. I think if anybody's a fan of Serginho Dest and has watched him, I think we all remember like the low light of his career was that game he had against Mbappe. And to be fair, there's only one Mbappe, but still, it was a tough low light. I think Mbappe had 4 goals in that game or something like that. It was
bad.
It was bad. Yeah. So, it's a question mark. I think you got to go with Dest. I think Berhalter goes with Dest. I think it would be really interesting if he gave Scally like his first World Cup start against England. That's a big moment. Not saying Scally can't handle it. As you said, he's been put in tough situations throughout his career over at Borussia Mönchengladbach, but I don't know. I think you need Dest, and the key to this game is all of our players have to have really good games. I mean, that's
and they have to play as a unit. They can't go out there with different ideas and try to shine in their own way. There has to be and this comes down to Greg. There has to be a very clear game plan here. So I don't know. I think it's time to move on to the midfield because I have seen some questions in the comment about how many players I'm actually playing in the midfield.
Okay, so I'm assuming the captain, Tyler Adams, is going to start at the 6?
He does not. He is surgically attached to the pitch.
Now, there's a lot of questions about how the midfield will actually set up. Is it going to be a double pivot? Is it going to be more like the 4-3-3 that we saw against Wales? But just let's go right for it. Give me your other 2 midfielders.
Yunus Musa and Brendan Aronson. I think you play a double pivot and you have Brendan pressing and getting back. I think with the double pivot, you have Yunus and Tyler really working in tandem, but I see Tyler staying back a lot, and I see Yunus really pushing the ball up the pitch, and Brendan is just going to do what he does for his money at Leeds. I mean, he is just going to press. I mean, the kid does not get tired. I really think this is a prime game for Brendan Aronson.
Yeah, I see Saul Salas in the comments says, "Am I the only one who didn't like how Tyler Adams played?" And yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I think he was roundly voted the man of the match for just about everyone, most American fans. He was phenomenal against Wales, and he saved us many, many times. Yeah, I think I actually had the same midfield as you. I have Yunus Musa and I have Brendan Aronson. I think. Ideally, you have Weston McKennie as the other midfielder, but I don't think that we have the Weston McKennie 100% that we need right now. I don't think that it's that physically dominant Weston McKennie. And if you have a Peacock account or if you're watching NBC Sports on Saturday mornings, you're seeing that Brendan Aronson is going up against these players week in and week out, and he's playing in this position, and he's doing it pretty damn well. His ability to play against the ball on defense is phenomenal. And then once he's able to create those turnovers, which he was able to do against Wales, he's able to make smart decisions, start counterattacks, and run right at the opposition, which I think is what we're going to need in this game against England. So yeah, I'm absolutely going with Musa and Aronson, and it does give us the opportunity to bring Weston on off the bench if we need that down the road. But yeah, I think that's my 2 midfielders. Anything else on the midfield?
I think there's a saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Brendan Aronson has scored 2 lucky goals or contributed to 2 lucky goals, one against Chelsea and one against Liverpool, from just being tenacious and never giving up on a play. I definitely could see a team like England who is very confident for good reason. Make no mistake, for good reason, making a mistake because they have someone who is just an absolute maniac like Tyler Adams pressing them like crazy. I don't think it's going to be the howlers that we saw from the Chelsea and the Liverpool game, but I do think there could be those opportunities where there's a second ball that one of our attackers can pounce on because Brendan was chasing somebody down.
Yeah, and I think we're giving a healthy amount of respect to England because they absolutely deserve it. But I think the story of this World Cup so far has been just unexpected results. Teams that weren't expected to play as well, just coming out and shocking teams that were expected to be a lot better. I mean, Saudi Arabia goes out and beats one of the expected favorites in this tournament in Argentina, a game that took place so damn early in the morning that I don't know if any Americans saw it. Unless they like watch the replay or something. Germany loses out to just a very fun team to watch in Japan.
That 2-0 loss isn't looking as bad as it was back in September now.
It isn't. But at the same time, I don't know if this Germany team is exactly the Germany team from like 2014.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Not at all. Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of interesting upsets and some interesting results so far in the World Cup. And there's no reason that the U.S. can't get something similar. The better team in soccer doesn't always win. The team that executes the best doesn't always win. The team with the most XG doesn't always win. The team with the better tactics doesn't always win. Sometimes you get screwy results in soccer, and we're hoping something like that comes our way. Burnman 23 says, what do you think of having the two in the D midline like Juan Carlos Osorio suggested? Now he's referring to the much discussed double pivot, the double pivot that Greg Berhalter wanted to trot out in the September friendlies, but was unable to do so because Yunus Musa was not able to participate in those friendlies. And I do think that it's something we'll see, particularly if Brendan Aronson plays in this game. I think, oh boy, memory, here we go. In the game against Morocco or Uruguay, I can't remember which one.
It was Morocco. It was when we beat them 3-0. Yes, this was when Brendan played centrally. Yes.
Brendan played centrally in the midfield, and we reversed the pyramid, and we did play in a double pivot. And I could absolutely see something like that happening in this game, in a game where we're not expecting to have the ball quite as much. And it worked really effectively in that game. It also dropped Yunus Musa further back, and it just allowed us to more competently and securely build from the back. So the way that Greg Berhalter's talked about the double pivot, I absolutely can see something like that coming.
Absolutely.
Are we ready to move to the forward line?
Yes, let's get nuts.
All right. I'm asking because he hobbled off the field. He got the crap kicked out of him against Wales. He's been attacked a little bit by the American fan base and me also for some poor decisions that he made in transition, and some poor executed crosses and some poor things that happened in the final third. But Christian Pulisic came through for the U.S. against Wales. He made the goal contributing run downfield. He made the assist, and it was an absolutely picture perfect assist. One of the most attractive goals that the U.S. has ever created in a World Cup. The goal that Tim Weah put underneath the keeper. But do you think the Captain America, Christian Pulisic, the pride of Pennsylvania, starts at left wing for the U.S. against England?
Yes. Yes. Yes, I think he does. I think this is a game. He's too familiar with these guys. He has too much talent to leave on the bench. I think this is a game where we could see him be special, be the Christian that we all know, hope and know that he can be. I can't leave him on the bench. I know he made some mistakes, but he also made a great pass that led to the goal. He got the crap kicked out of him. If he's feeling fit, he's feeling healthy. Yes, you play him at that left wing.
Let's see. We have a donation here. I can't see how much that is. Is that $5?
$5.
$5 from Mark Baker. He says, thank you, Sam, for not harping on what sells. You might get frustrated, but you move on. Great content. Hey, thank you, Mark Baker, the second. I appreciate that.
We try to be positive here at the Yank Report.
I have a weird sensibility that it creeps into everything. So you're welcome for that. Anyway, so yeah, I have Christian Pulisic as well. We need Christian Pulisic to play. We need him to be the best version of Christian Pulisic. I mean, we need what was the game where he scored the natural hat trick? Who did he play?
Oh gosh. Was that Crystal Palace?
Yeah, he always beats Crystal Palace. Yeah.
He turns into Pele against Crystal Palace. You know what I want? There was one run he made and scored a goal. They had already lost the game, but it was during lockdown against Liverpool. and he scores this great goal. He toasts their back line, and then Jurgen Klopp is just like Mr. Miyagi on the touchline going,
I think you're mixing up two. So he had one great run against Liverpool where he played the ball into I forgot who scored the goal, but he beat a bunch of defenders and he had an assist. And then later on in that game, he had this moment where they crossed the ball in and he took it off his chest and he shot it in for the goal. So he had an enormous impact. And that
all I remember is Klopp on the touchline just going,
yeah. And then that was around the same time where he had his phenomenal run against Manchester City. That's the dude, Tammy Abraham. Thank you, guys. That's the dude who we need showing up on Friday against England. I mean, we need that guy in the worst way. We've seen Christian Pulisic, I think, throughout his career at Chelsea. He'll have a bad game. He'll have like 3 or 4 okay games, and then he'll have a freak show phenomenal game. And we need that freak show phenomenal game Friday. Oh, boy.
The freak show phenomenal games all came under Frank Lampard.
That's true.
It's one of those things.
He's had some games recently. I mean, he's had some like moments off.
There was some great combination play with Mason Mount that led to his goal against. Wow, I covered this game. Where was who? It's his only goal this season.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was great combination play. He also he's had some very near misses, not blind like horrible near misses, like ones where the keeper made a good save. He's shown the flashes that he can still be that dude. And gosh, he's only 24. I mean, I know you should be rounding into the form to your prime then, but no, I think this could be. I mean, this has all the markings of it. I mean, this is, if you're a Hollywood screenwriter, this has all the telltale signs of a great game for a player. You're much maligned in this country. You're never spoken of well by the English media. This is the game we see him do it, if he's ever going to do it.
And let's not forget, it was the friendly against England that many cite as the reason why Chelsea paid so much damn money for him. Whenever the U.S. played England.
Alexander-Arnold.
He played a through ball to himself and outran the entire England back line. It was incredible. S27 donates $1.99. He says, we need Iran and Wales to tie or Iran to win. That would be great. That would be great. Absolutely. We need to beat England is what we need to do. If we do that, then we're good to go.
Don't focus what's on someone else's plate. Focus on what's on yours.
Yeah,
but yes, I will be up at 5 a.m. to watch that game.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the comment section earlier said Champions League run Pulisic. I mean, I'll never forget whenever he just like broke Sergio Ramos's ankles and just I believe he played a ball into Mason Mount for a goal. And then there was the moment where Jorginho played him in and he just sat down the keeper. And, beautiful. Great times.
We forget that he had during that Champions League run for Chelsea, he won man of the match twice during that run. And that's, I mean, I don't know. That's not someone you can leave on the bench. And it's not like he's fallen off a cliff here. He's still that dude. He still can be that dude. It's, I think it's a confidence thing. And I don't know. I think this is the game he does it.
That's knock on Pulisic,
optimist to me.
Nobody has ever said that Pulisic can't be an incredible top-level player. The knock on Pulisic is injuries and consistency. Can he do it game in, game out? And that's always been the knock on his career. We need to see it. We need to see it Friday. Yep. Soccer Boy Media donates $10, and he says, Tim Weah should start at the number 9 position, opening the right for Reina with Pulisic on the left. And the way you're celebrating seems to me to suggest that might be your final 2 players for the starting 11.
Soccer Boy Media, from your lips to the soccer god's ears. That's what I have. This is a game where you need your best guys out on the pitch. And for God's sakes, we know Tim Weah is fast. He has a great first touch. And Greg made that weird comment that made Jimmy Conrad's head explode. If you watch in Soccer We Trust, he lost his damn mind. That Tim can play at the 9. He can also play it right back. Tim Weah, you can't take him off the field. You have to find a way to get him into the attack. And I think you also have to find a way to get Gio Reyna into that attack. And I think you haven't gotten consistent performances from your number 9 position. why not? Why not now? This is, if you're hoping, and we just mentioned it, the Iran game. I think that game can inform a lot of the decisions that are made for this lineup. But if you're just going for it, if you're really just going all out, I definitely think Weah at the 9 is not the worst shout in the world. That's who I have starting.
Raging Review says, Sam, how do we donate? I'm not 100% sure. I've done it before. I haven't done it in a while. I think there's a like a dollar sign at the top of the chat box. Somebody help them out with that. I'd appreciate that. Yeah, I made a tweet today and I got absolutely crushed for it by everybody on soccer Twitter. Whenever I suggested that Jesus Ferreira could have potentially had more combination play than Josh Sargent in the game against Wales. And I think it would have been fairly easy to do because any combination play would have been better than what we got from Josh Sargent. I mean, Josh Sargent had 2 contributions to the game. He had the hold-up moment that gave Christian Pulisic the goal, and he also had that near-post header. Outside of that, I believe, what's John Mueller, I believe is the guy's name, who always posts the stats for the Atlantic. He showed the passing tree for the game against Wales, and it was a complete horseshoe. And Josh Sargent did not have any trees. I mean, he just wasn't involved at all. I just was not impressed by his game. To be fair to all the Ferreira critics, I don't know if Ferreira's the answer. I don't know if Ferreira would be any better. I don't know that Haji Wright would be any better. So if you want to potentially put Tim Weah in that position, if you want to put Gio in that position, I don't know that I can have a real strong argument to disagree with you. I think the only real argument that I can have is that Tim Weah has been so damn good at that right winger position, that he's been so important to this team and what we do, that it's hard to take him out of that. But outside of that, I mean, who do you want at striker? I don't know if there's anybody has really made a strong claim to that position.
I think one thing to take into account for that link-up play and being able to play through the middle is if we do that double pivot and have Brendan centrally. I think that is something that could really inform that decision. If you're looking for someone, if we're still playing that 4-3-3, that could drop back a little bit more, I think Jesus would probably be your guy, because that's one thing we've talked about a lot, is that he does drop back and help with the connect the attack a lot more. Sometimes he's a little overzealous and drops a little too far back down the pitch. But I think if you play Brendan centrally, I think that kind of alleviates that worry a bit. Does that make sense?
I mean, if Gio is in the game, it kind of nullifies the reason to have Ferreira in the game for sure. I understand that completely. I don't know that Gio is going to start though. It's the injury issues are concerning for me. There's specific game models that work for Ferreira. There's specific game models that work for Sargent, although I think Sargent can apply in a few more areas than any of the other strikers. And, Haji had some moments where he contributed as well. I mean, he had some decent.
He didn't look bad. He did not look
bad at all. If I see Haji Wright's name on the team sheet Friday, I'm not that upset. I don't know that anybody can be. It's not like anybody really contributed that much in the striker position. Raging Pagan just donates $25. Hey, appreciate it. Man. Hey, thank you, sir. Yeah, so I'm willing to go anyway. Let me ask you specifically about Sargent. I mean, after Sargent's performance against Wales, do you think Sargent has a claim for the starting spot against England?
No, I don't think he has a claim on it. There wasn't enough good service into the box for him to really do that much, but I don't think he didn't go grab it, but he didn't do anything to hurt the team either. And he make no mistake, the build up to that goal doesn't happen without Josh Sargent. So I don't know. I was hoping to see in this I think is more on our wingers and our wing backs, a little bit more of an aerial presence from him. But again, that's not all on him. But I can see him saying that, he didn't do anything to hurt his claim, but he also didn't do that much to help his claim.
I'm in the camp that a striker has to be in position to get those chances. I'm in the camp that the top strikers score a lot of goals because they consistently regardless of service, put themselves in the best positions to score goals. And I don't know that Josh Sargent has done that throughout his career. I mean, if you watch his time at Bremen or you watched him at Norwich, even though he didn't play a lot of striker at Norwich whenever they were in the Premier League, he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to shoot because he just doesn't put himself in great positions. And I think we saw that against Wales a lot. It was those moments where the U.S. were in transition or, we had a ball in a threatening position. There were just no moments where Josh Sargent made great runs, where he was putting himself in position where the U.S. really could have played him in and scored. I mean, there was one moment I can recall at the beginning of the game where Tim Weah got the ball on the wing and he immediately fired it across, and that Wales defender headed it back to the keeper. That was right at the beginning of the game. It was like 8 minutes in. I mean, Josh Sargent might have had a step on his defender at that point, and he could have potentially played a square ball across, potentially. But even then, I don't know. I don't know. And the knock on Ferreira has always been that he doesn't score goals, but he does put himself in those positions. And I think that is absolutely a skill set, and that tends to be forgotten among soccer fans. However, I can't dismiss Haji Wright. And yeah, Tim Weah has been one of the better players for the U.S. throughout. It would be very interesting if Greg did that. It would also be very interesting if he just flipped the table over and went with that 3-man back line and maybe put Haji Wright up top. And just we play long and we get Haji to run down in the channels to chase down balls, to potentially get some flick-ons for maybe Pulisic, whoever else is up there with him. Haji is not, he's a big striker, but he doesn't really play big man ball in the way that Jordan Pefok does. I remember like early Josie Altidore, before he learned to use his body, was a big man, but didn't really play big man ball. He eventually learned how to do that later on in his career. You can make a case for any of these guys.
You bring up Josie Altidore, and one of my first soccer memories after Clint's goal was about 20 minutes later. Josie Altidore absolutely toasts Jamie Carragher.
Oh, yeah.
3 inches away, just about that much away from banging one past Robert Green. So if we have that and it's 3 inches to the right, I will be happy, whoever is up front.
Yeah, I saw the Scuff podcast has been doing recaps of legacy games, and one of the ones that they did was the USA-England game, and they made a big deal about that moment where Josie absolutely little brother Jamie Carragher
burned Jamie Carragher, who, to be fair, has been talking some mad smack. He said 4-0. He said 4-0. That dude who's smelling like barbecue chicken after Josie Altidore just blew by him.
I think one thing to take in consideration is that nobody's beaten the hell out of this version of the U.S. men's national team. I mean, nobody's put in a ton of goals against us. Even the games where we've gotten absolutely smoked, like think back to that Japan game. I mean, they didn't run up the score against us, and really they weren't able to break it open until we kind of put subs in at that point. This U.S. squad under Berhalter has just not given up a ton of goals. I mean, Wales, for all their credit, all that they were able to accomplish in the second half, did not really have clear looks at goal. If it had not been for that challenge from Walker Zimmerman and the subsequent penalty, I don't think that Wales is scoring a goal against us. I think
we'd be having a very different conversation.
I think we'd be having a very different conversation right now. England absolutely is going to be the most talented team that we've played under Greg Berhalter. I think bar none, at least this version of England. I mean, maybe you can make a case for Uruguay, but we didn't play the top Uruguay that we could have possibly played.
They put most of their best guys in for like the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Boy, we were hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this England team is going to be better for 90 minutes than that Uruguay team was, certainly. So maybe this is the game where the U.S. does get ripped open. But, the U.S. has just had a strong defensive shell in the entire Greg Berhalter era. And we've got a keeper that can flat out keep balls out of the back of the net, and Matt Turner. And that combination has served the U.S. very well in World Cups prior. So maybe we'll see that again.
Nothing would make me happier than to beat England. I don't know. I'm tired. as if you forgive me for getting on a soapbox for a second here, I'm tired of Americans being talked down to by a European commentator about how we should like soccer, how we should love football. I love this game and I've learned a lot about it. I don't need someone telling me, oh, the US is never going to be good at this game. We are good at this game. We're still just figuring it out a little bit. So I don't know. I just that's my 2 cents right there.
Yeah, the United States is absolutely a juggernaut, and this thing just keeps growing. I mean, this is the first iteration of I don't know what you want to call it, like American Soccer 4.0, and you could already tell that the early returns just keep returning, and they're returning more and more and more. I mean, one of the things that happened that didn't get a ton of headlines just because the World Cup has been overshadowing everything is that Paxton Aronson got an opportunity to move to Europe. I think he's going to be playing in Germany in the upcoming in the upcoming season. And that's a player that did not see much time for Philadelphia Union over the last MLS season. And that's not an unusual thing at the moment. I mean, the MLS is exporting players, exporting young prospects that aren't even establishing themselves on their MLS teams before heading over there. So this conveyor belt that I think really started with Pulisic and McKinney and Adams, it just continues bearing fruit. And go ahead.
I'm just saying the worst nightmare of the gatekeepers of this sport is coming true. And it's that we're figuring out how to take our domestic league and grow really good players and then send them off to really good teams where they can really hone their craft and make a difference on the national stage. I mean, there are guys who are born and raised in America who are getting called in by England, getting called in because they have citizenship, similar to what we've done with Cameron Carter-Vickers, Jedi Robinson, Jermaine Jones. Argentina, I think Germany and England have called in 3 of our homegrown guys, and it's happening. Like, it's growing. The sport has grown leaps and bounds. It's because the visibility of the game, the TV rights have been figured out. I was listening to Brendan Hunt and Raj from the Men in Blazers talking about it. I can't remember when you and I were growing up, other than Fox Soccer Channel, I can't remember who had rights to any of the leagues. I can't remember where I could go to watch soccer. Now kids today are watching everything. I mean, you listen to Brendan Aronson. US Soccer tweeted out a clip of him, and he was like, "Yeah, my favorite player growing up was Messi. I watched Messi all the time." And I'm like, "Crap, dude! I watched Messi in college on ESPN." Like, make me feel old, there, guy. But the kids growing up nowadays in the States there's a pathway for them. And it's only a matter of time until we're an absolute unit at this game.
Yeah, I think if people upset. I think if you look at the nations that dominate world soccer, one of the things that you can see is population has a lot to do with it. One of the reasons why Brazil is just this conveyor belt of power, as opposed to nations like Ecuador or Colombia or Uruguay, for that matter, is Brazil is one of the largest nations in the world, and they are the largest soccer crazy nation in the world. So they're just able to export talent at a rate that nobody else can keep up with. The U.S., even if soccer is not our biggest sport, even if it's only our 3rd or 4th biggest sport, whatever, we still have the resources and the people to start competing, maybe not so much with Brazil, but with some of these smaller European nations for sure. I mean, we can creep our way into that top 8, which would make us a perennial quarterfinal team. We can get there for sure within the next 8 to 12 years. And then once you get there, what happens? It's going to be really interesting to see. And I think a big part of it is going to be the growth of MLS, but also the growth of MLS along with Liga MX. I think this League Cup is going to be a huge deal for the growth of soccer in this country. And I think we're seeing that as MLS continues to grow and as American soccer gets better, it's not lifting just the United States, but it's also lifting Canada, certainly. I think it's going to lift Mexico as well. And I think we're seeing all these other nations in Concacaf, Honduras, Panama, Jamaica, all these other teams that have players playing in the league as well. It's kind of the rising tide that lifts all ships. And as soccer continues to grow in this region, it's only going to make the U.S. better.
Absolutely. And I posted a clip on my Instagram the other day because I came across a reel that had it was a news report. I don't know what outlet it was from, but it quoted a poll to the players. It had all the players from the '94 World Cup in the buildup. So it was a few months before, and it said a poll said that 80% of Americans had no idea that the World Cup was taking place in America. Now, that just absolutely boggles my mind. I mean, now in 2026, you're not going to be, honestly, in 8 months, you're not going to be able to get away from the World Cup 2026. It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to know about it, and it's only going to grow the game leaps and leaps and bounds. And now that there's a sustained domestic league and a path for these guys to do great things, it's only going to, it's only onward and upwards. The narrative that American men's soccer is disappointing or is never going to be there is asinine. It's growing and it's there now, and there really is no turning back.
Yeah, and I want to make a point clear because I'm seeing some people in the comment section saying that population doesn't have anything to do with the output of your soccer country. I'm not saying it's strictly population. I'm saying the amount of people that care about soccer in your country and are playing soccer on a regular basis does have a direct impact on the amount of people that you're going to be exporting that are going to be rising up to the top level. There are some outliers, like Uruguay, I think has like 4 million people. That's one of the outliers that competes at a very high level despite not having that population. But if you look at the world population, you can see that like let's say the top 25 FIFA nations, a lot of them are around like 60 million people and above. So you get to this area where you need to have a certain population, but then you also need the academies and you need the coaching and the training and the competition within that nation to put out players on a regular basis. The two, I think, outliers on both ends of the spectrum are Uruguay on the good side. I can't figure out what my fingers are. Uruguay on the good side and Mexico on the bad side. Mexico is one of the largest nations in the world. They're a soccer crazy nation, but they can't put out elite talent. I think there's a reason for that. I think it's cultural. I think they don't really grow with the times. They're very into the way that they play. They care about the way they play. And I think that they kind of deflate their talent because they refuse to let them leave. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. But yeah, it's going to be difficult if you're a nation with, say, 2 million people, like some of the Caribbean nations that we go up against on a regular basis have. It's just going to really be difficult to ever compete with a nation like Brazil or I don't know, some of the bigger nations in the world, just because you don't have the output. We got a donation. I want to get to Quentin Hicks here, $4.99. He says, "We seem to always play terribly in the second game of a 3-game window with this team. What do you think the chances of that happening are?" I would say, I mean, you got to keep in mind that this team has changed so much. I mean, it's not like a club team where you're getting the same 11 players or the same 23 players week in and week out. We have seen so many different teams, so many different players come through this national team throughout World Cup qualifying. I think the World Cup is a little bit different. I think these players are absolutely going to be up for it. So I'm predicting that we won't have a letdown. Whether or not that's going to be enough is that's a different case altogether. But I definitely think they're going to be up for it.
Yeah, I think that it's also these dudes know that everybody is going to be watching, and they know how big of a stage that they're on. So I don't think whether or not it's enough, like you said, is an entirely different thing. But I don't think you'll see a big drop off from the product that was put out there. Hopefully it's closer to the first half than it was to the second half from the Wales game.
All right. I think we've really wrapped up and put a bow on the England game. I do want to take a minute to talk about some of the other soccer that we've seen at the World Cup. I mean, particularly some of the Concacaf nations that we've seen play. I mean, that Canada-Belgium game was absolutely something else. I mean, did you get an opportunity to watch it? And if so, what were your thoughts on it?
I got to watch most of the second half. But I had a chance to see the highlights. I mean, and I also saw a stat that they're the first nation to have a penalty kick and 20 plus shots on goal and not score, which is just heartbreaking for them. But that's what you get when you go up against Thibaut Courtois. He's one of the greats.
Yeah, I mean, a great goalie can absolutely save you. It's absolutely crazy because whenever I think a lot of people wake up tomorrow or whatever or checking the stats today, they're gonna the box scores. They're gonna see Belgium beat Canada. Of course they did. They're the better team. They're the European team. They're the one of the favorites in this tournament. But if you actually watch the game, you know that that was against the run of play. Belgium absolutely should not have won that game. I mean, Canada was the better team, and to the point where I was questioning some of my preconceived notions about this Canada team. I mean, they got some damn good players. I remember following the Canada USA game, actually following both Canada USA games. I absolutely lit up Christian Pulisic because of his one-on-ones with Alistair Johnson. I mean, there was a few moments there in those games where Christian had Alistair Johnson one-on-one. Alistair Johnson is a center back for I believe Club de Foot Montreal. And you would think that like our golden boy, all world left winger who just specializes in taking players on would be able to beat him. But then I'm watching Alistair Johnson versus Belgium, and he's just on both sides of the field. And he's playing great defense. He's playing great offense. He's putting in these inch perfect crosses. And I'm just sitting here like, who is this dude? I mean, Canada has some impressive players, and they're going to be fun to watch throughout the tournament.
They also have an identity. They have this sense of togetherness, and they have the way that they're going to play. And it's hard-nosed football, man. I mean, they are willing to get stuck in. They're always up for a fight. So, I mean, really, hats off to Canada and the boys.
Mexico had a tie against Poland. I didn't get a chance to watch this game as closely as I would have liked.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah, I think Mexican fans came into this tournament with some low expectations, and I think that they the team delivered on that. In the game against Poland. Costa Rica, I think we knew that Costa Rica was coming into this tournament with a golden generation that I think has past ripened and is ready to be put out to pasture, and they got absolutely crushed. So RIP Costa Rica. I think we saw in that last game of World Cup qualifying, whenever Costa Rica actually did turn over the roster to a lot of young players, that they've got some good players coming through for sure. I think they'll be all right in the long run, but this ain't their World Cup.
No, this is not Brazil. This is the generation of the Ticos making that magical run. It's aged out, which is a bummer, but you know, hey, you got some young guys on that roster who are getting good experience, good exposure. Take that as you will.
Poor Ticos. My God. I mean, Spain just put on a clinic against them. It was just
they scored a touchdown and the extra point.
All right. So I think tomorrow, let's see. If the U.S. is playing on Friday, that means that tomorrow, Thursday, on Thanksgiving is going to be the last day of the first round. So we'll be able to see all the teams play. But so far, we've gotten to see most of the teams play. Any thoughts on a favorite now that we've seen a lot of these guys play?
Honestly, my favorite coming into the tournament was Argentina, and now I'm rethinking a lot of my life choices right now. But no, England looked great. We're gonna have to be on our best day to hang with them. And Spain, the mix of experience and youth on that team really is impressive, and really is a testament to that federation.
Yeah, the Spanish team was very impressive, albeit they were playing against a Costa Rican side that just really had no answers for anything they were doing, and they really couldn't test them at all. We'll see what happens whenever they go against some of the more elite teams in this tournament. I think Argentina is absolutely going to bounce back. I wouldn't worry too much about Argentina. We've yet to see Brazil. That's going to be interesting. I mean, they're probably the odds-on favorite at this point.
Yep, they were the odds-on favorite by quite a substantial margin coming in.
England England looked very strong against Iran. We'll see what they do Friday against the U.S. That's going to say a lot. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the World Cup is an absolute blast. I hope you guys are watching a ton of games right now and really enjoying just this wonderful, wonderful month of soccer, because they don't stick around very long. And once they go, you don't get another one for a long time. So, Brad, I think we're going to wrap it up right here.
Yep.
We're hitting the hour mark. I appreciate you guys for sticking around. Make sure you hit the like button if you have it, if you haven't yet. Before we go, Brad, I want you to let everybody in the comments section and everybody who's going to watch this video later on, I want you to let them know why the U.S. is going to beat England on Friday.
You know, I just finished so I'm here in my brother's house, and my grandmother is down here for Thanksgiving, and her favorite cocktail is a gin and tonic, a Tanqueray and tonic, which is a London dry gin. And I called her this week and I said, Grandmother, there will be no English gin in this house this Thanksgiving week. So I just finished a Blue Coat gin and tonic, Blue Coat from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have the tenacity, we have the guys, we have the will and the fight that has been embedded in us since that nation pissed us off back in the late 1700s. We can do it. Throw their damn tea in the harbor again. Get after it, boys. Don't listen to what anybody's saying. Don't even listen to what I'm saying. Listen to each other. Listen to Greg. Get after it. Stick together. And when all things come down to it, look into the eyes of that beautiful bastard, Tim Ream, because he will say, stay calm, fellas. We got this. He looks like Hulk Hogan if you gave him a buzz cut and turned it into a little handlebar mustache there. Come on, boys. You can do it.
Blue Coat gin. I absolutely love that level of pettiness. If any of you guys eat an English muffin for breakfast tomorrow, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I believe we'll let Banjo playing Bison take us out. He'll play us out with the U.S. has never lost to England in the World Cup. The U.S. just does not lose to England in anything, and we're going to keep that going. We're going to keep that spirit going. Somehow, some way, something's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but the U.S. is going to beat that damn team. And we're going to get out of this damn group.
But I would love a win.
I'll take a draw, but I'll love a win. We sure would. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. We are your home for World Cup coverage throughout this tournament, so make sure if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button to give this video a bump. And if you really want to support the channel, you can become a member. You've seen some of the members in the comment section tonight. They're the ones with the fancy badges, so they definitely stand out in the crowd. The member section directly supports the channel, so if you really want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Sam, and for Brad Pauly, this has been the Yank Report, brought to you by Bet Online.